Hello, I'm Peter and welcome to another Tekken Beginner's Fundamental video. In this video, we will explore the topic of homing and tracking attacks. Now, this is a complementary guide to the previous video that we did on sidestepping and sidewalking, which you can find here. Fuck, this is the wrong finger. Here. Shit, you can't see this finger. Alright, you can find it here. In this video, we will cover what homing and partial tracking attacks are, what the differences are between them, and how to effectively use them. Now, as a reminder, if you enjoy learning Tekken related things and being entertained, consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell below to get the latest on any new content I release. Now, without further ado, let's get going. Homing attacks. Alright, as we previously discussed, sidestepping and sidewalking are two extremely powerful movement options. They allow a player to be evasive on the offense and evasive on the defense, and open up punishment opportunities on otherwise safe attacks. So how do we deal with all this movement? Let me introduce homing attacks. What are homing attacks? Well, homing attacks can hit opponents moving sideways, be it stepping or walking. First introduced in Tekken 6, this has since translated over to Tekken 7. Now, there are two particular ways to see if an attack is a homing attack. The first and easiest is to check the move list, alright? Any move with this blue circular arrow inside it denotes a homing attack. And the second and harder way is to look for the faint white aura that follows the attack. Homing attacks have this distinct and unique streaky white motion blur line when the attack starts up and connects. So look for this line to see if it's a homing attack or not. Benefits and drawbacks. Well, first we'll start with the benefits. Homing attacks usually catch sidestepping and sidewalking opponents mid-movement and hit them. Note that more advanced techniques such as sidestep blocking can protect opponents, but this is for another time and another fundamentals video. We're focusing more on beginner stuff, so stay with me here. Homing attacks, great because they catch sidestepping and sidewalking opponents. Alright, so we get the benefits. What's the drawback? Why not use them all the time then, Peter? Why not just constantly throw out homing attacks so then our opponent can't step them? Well, the game balances things out for the most part. A good number of homing attacks come out somewhere between 17 and 22 frames on startup, which is slower than your, say, standard down forward 1, which is 13 or 14 frames on startup. And not just that, most homing attacks leave the user between -4 to -9 frames on block, and quite frankly, some are even more punishable on block. Because of these compounding reasons, I advise not throwing out homing attacks needlessly. And yes, I'm aware some homing attacks leave the user at plus frames on block, but really they're the exception and not the majority. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt. Okay, cool. So let's look at some examples. Before moving on to partial tracking moves, let's look at two extremely polarizing homing attacks. One good, one not so good. Paul. His back one. Now, Paul has one of the best homing attacks in the game. It comes out super quick at 12 frames and is completely safe on block. The only downside is that it hits high, but honestly, that can be overlooked due to its sheer speed, right? All in all, this is an excellent homing attack. Gigas. Sidestep 2. Okay, on the complete inverse is Gigas' Sidestep 2. This attack comes out of a sidestep and starts up in 37 frames roughly. Okay, so super duper slow. And if that wasn't enough, it's also -12 on block, so it's punishable. By the time this move comes out, your opponent can probably finish their sidestep, step away from the game, read the morning paper, make a cup of coffee, eat breakfast, come back to the game, and block the attack. So yeah, clearly not the best homing attack in the game, and yes, in case you were curious, this is also a high attack, just like pause back 1, but it's significantly slower. So not all homing attacks are made the same, some good, some not so great. Partial tracking attacks. Now, even if your opponent is stepping you constantly or sidewalking you constantly, homing attacks are not necessarily always the best idea due to their usually subpar frame data, right? Thankfully, though, we have partial tracking attacks, which sacrifice a little bit of tracking for some better frame data. Now, what are partial tracking attacks? Even though they're not listed as true homing attacks, partial tracking attacks track particularly well to one side or both. Now, usually these attacks are moves that have a limb that move from one side to the other, like they hook from one side to the other, but this doesn't always have to be the case. Benefits and drawbacks. Partial tracking attacks oftentimes have better frame data than homing attacks. Since, most homing attacks are fairly slow to start up, could be very minus on block, or only hit high. Partial tracking attacks are often preferable in this case because one of these aspects is better. It could be that it has a faster startup, could be that it's less on block, or it could be that it hits mid. Or who knows, it could check all three of these boxes, right? The downside is that it's only partially tracking, as the name suggests. It may track fairly well to one side, but fairly poorly to the other side. If we're playing against a particularly elusive opponent who's stepping every which way with no rhyme or reason, then covering the correct side with a partial tracking attack can sometimes be a flip of the coin. But not all partial tracking attacks are created equal, like all things Tekken. Some tracking attacks or partial tracking attacks should really be considered homing attacks because of how well they track to both sides. But we'll consider them still as partial tracking attacks since they aren't listed as homing attacks in the game. One last note, partial tracking attacks might not always track perfectly, even to the side it intends to track. Sometimes a good sidestep or sidewalk, something with the frame data or timing, right, can result in an unexpected whiff, even on the correct side. Because after all, it's not homing. Now let's look at some examples of partial tracking attacks. First up is Jack 7. Jack is particularly weak to sidewalk left and sidestep left, which means that for the most part, a lot of characters can play against him the same way you would against Kazuya, just sidewalk left all day and sidestep left all day. However, as many of us know, Jack has down forward 2. This fucker here, right? Most Jack players will try to check sidestepping and sidewalking left opponents with this attack, but against more experienced players, this will get punished, and against higher level players, this could get launched, right? So in comes forward 1. This attack usually suffices as a tracking attack for Jack, since most of his other moves are fairly lackluster. Forward 1 will do the job. This attack comes out reasonably quick, has decent range, and tracks okay to Jack's left side and right side. Second example, Law. Law has 2 go-to particular moves, one for each side. For sidestep left, he can use a down forward 1, and for sidestep right, he can use a down forward 2. Now, down forward 1 is a safe mid poke that is great for checking opponents who are ducking and opponents pressing slower buttons. Down forward 2 is a safe launcher on standing opponents and just an all-around great move to throw out against standing opponents. Both of these moves start up fairly quickly and are completely safe on block. So when these 2 moves are combined together, they complement Law's gameplay of poking, staying safe, and playing the close-up and pressure game. So down forward 1 covers one side for law, and down forward 2 covers the other side for law. So he doesn't have to resort to his homing attacks, even though his homing attacks are really good. Last example, Fang. Okay, this last example of a partial tracking attack should really be considered a homing attack because Fang's fish hook, his back 4, this attack is so good that it is literally one of the only attack Fang players have to really throw out against sidestepping and sidewalking opponents. It covers Fang's left and it covers Fang's right side, so really good move, and it comes out super quick. Now the only drawback is really its range, right? Other than that, it's incredible. It comes out 12 frames, it's mid, safe on block, it checks all 3 of these boxes. What more could you ask for? Which one to use? Let's look at some situations and figure out whether it's a homing attack or a partial tracking attack that's the right call, and which one to use. Now there are some parameters to be aware of when considering. The first one is direction. If the opponent is stepping and we are unsure if he's going to go left or right, we want to cover both sides and use a homing attack to smack that ass. Though an honorary homing attack, but actually a partial tracking attack, is Fang's back 4. This could work too. Now, let's say you know or have a good idea which direction the opponent is going to be stepping or moving. A partial tracking attack here might be a better call. I caveat with this with the word might, because the answer depends on the quality of the move, including things like the next categories: speed and hit level. Speed. Typically speaking, you want to use the fastest possible attack, which could be homing or a partial tracking attack, depending on the character's move list. So this is a character to character thing, so know your character. Now, typically partial tracking moves come out faster, have better frames on block than homing attacks, making them the ideal or preferred attack to use. Hit level. All right, this is the next parameter that we need to consider, because if the opponent likes to duck a lot as well as sidestepping, we'll want to use a fast or the fastest mid homing attack that we have, or the fastest mid partial tracking attack that we have, provided it's relatively safe on block. But a case can be made for moves that are -12 or -13. The main thing is we don't know whether the opponent's going to sidestep, sidewalk, or duck. And because of those reasons, we want to use a fast move, and we want it to hit mid. Now, many characters, they'll have to resort to their down forward 1, but this will only track one side, so make sure you have something covered for the other side. Oh boy, so I nearly forgot this section altogether, but looking through everything, I had a practice section, but I did not record it, so I'm recording it now. What I want to do and establish in this practice section is figuring out for whichever character you play, be it Miguel, Brian, Lee, whoever, I want you to figure out for your character which moves are partial tracking moves. So in this section, we'll figure that out. So start up practice mode, choose your character, and then for the opponent, choose a smaller character. I would say somebody like Asuka is a good example. Don't choose somebody like Bears or Gigas, Jack, Eddie, you know, one of those characters with bad sidesteps. We also might want to stay away from characters with extremely good sidesteps and sidewalks like Elisa and Lily, because those are only 2 characters. So choose Asuka just to be safe, and go into practice settings. In practice settings, you will have action. CPU opponent action 1, we want to set this to guard all. And then CPU action 2, we want to actually have them, we'll start with sidewalk left. And then ground technique, not set is fine. Doesn't really matter. And then for stand up, I guess you can just do stand up. And everything else here should be fine for the most part. Reset settings doesn't matter. Display settings doesn't matter. And then other settings, as long as it's not on counter hit, everything else should be copacetic. So what we want to do is attack. We're going to start off with a jab, and then we'll do another jab so you can see. So we'll do jab into jab. So we see that Miguel's jab doesn't track to his right side. So any opponents who are sidestepping or sidewalking left, it will evade the next jab. So let's find a button that will track to this side. Does Miguel's down forward 1? No, it does not. How about his down forward 2? So we see that Miguel's down forward 2 tracks to his right side, so opponents sidestepping and sidewalking left will get clipped by this. Are there any other buttons? Let's try back 2. Nope, doesn't work. Let's try Miguel's back 1. Nope, doesn't work. How about forward 3? Doesn't work. What about forward 4? Oh shoot. I just remembered. Miguel's forward 4 is his homing attack. Let's try standing 4. Okay, so we see that Miguel's standing 4 works. So now we've discovered 2 moves now that partially track to Miguel's right side. Shutting down sidewalk and sidestep left. Down forward 2 and his standing 4. So these 2 moves are moves that we want to use then for partially tracking to left side. Of course, this also is, dependent on the frame data, so be sure to check that out as well before you just decide, hey, these are moves that track to, my character's left side or right side or whichever. Check the frame data, see if the homing attack is better. If it is, then use the homing attack. If the homing attack isn't better, then use one of these partial tracking attacks. Alright, so now let's try it for the opposite side. Let's try to have the computer do sidewalk right instead. So, for Miguel, I already know this one, but standing 1 into down forward 1. We'll track to Miguel's left side. Shutting down sidewalk and sidestep right. Let's try standing 4. Doesn't work. Down forward 2. Doesn't work. How about back 1? No, back 1 is actually quite linear, as we can see. So we'll do forward 3. See, that's actually very surprising to me, because forward 3 seems like a very linear move. Because this kick right here, he's just bringing his foot up and then down, right? So you wouldn't assume straight off the bat that it's actually going to track to his left side. Let's try back 4. Nope, power crush doesn't work. How about back 2? Okay, so back 2 tracks to Miguel's left side as well. So we have 2 moves. We have down forward 1, well actually we have 3, and then we also have forward 3, and then we have back 2. So we have those 3 moves that we can use. Now, what's also important is to make sure to test out some of your strings too, because your opponent's not always going to sidestep, sidewalk immediately after a single jab. They may try to do so after a string, right? So Miguel has 2-1 as a string, and let's try our options after that. Yep, so down forward 1 still works after the 2-1 string is blocked. What about forward 3? Oh, so after 2-1, forward 3 does not seem to connect. Probably because of the minus frames and how long it takes forward 3 to start up. It's not going to track after 2-1 on block. Yeah. So, may want to take out forward 3 as a potential tracking attack. Let's try back 2 then. Okay, so that one still seems to be in. Oh. Okay, maybe not. So we've discovered that it seems that back 2 sometimes hits and sometimes doesn't. So from this, I think we should only then, in this case, stick to down forward 1 as our partial tracking to Miguel's left side, right? 2-1, down forward 1 works, 2-1, back 2, inconsistent, right? Right, inconsistent. sometimes hits, and other times I'm assuming doesn't hit. Yeah, it doesn't hit. So there you have it. Hopefully this practice section gives you guys some ideas on how to test these things out. Try out a couple of your different strings into one of your partial tracking attacks once you've discovered what they might be, and go through the move list, right? You don't have to go through every single move, and you don't have to try out every single string, because there's a lot in the game, but just try out some of them. Maybe find one or two moves that are partial tracking. Maybe you'll find one move that covers left and right side for whichever character you play. So with that, thank you guys. Hopefully this helps you guys out, and let me know. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for sitting through this. I know that this might have seemed like a very trivial thing to address because there's not a whole lot of sidestepping and sidewalking happening in the lower ranks, say the blue or the green ranks, but from time to time you'll definitely encounter it. And maybe, who knows, you're running across an intermediate smurf or an advanced level player smurfing, and you should be able to identify this and to deal with it. And hopefully this video helped you guys out in that regard, because as you progress in the game, homing attacks and partially tracking attacks are going to be absolutely crucial in dealing with this, because players, as you progress further and further, their movement, your opponents, their movement get better and better. Hopefully. But yeah, if you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I check the comments quite regularly. If you have extended questions, consider joining the Discord. That's in the description below as well. So you can ask any types of questions in the Discord. It's very friendly towards everyone. We don't put anyone down. And I want to give a huge shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys so much for supporting me in this channel. We've grown quite a bit within the last couple of months. There's been a surge of people who are interested in Tekken, and you guys really help fund the channel. And thank you to the staff members as well here at Peter Y. Mao. Thank you so much, Crossroads. Thank you for editing the videos. And Moogle Monk, thank you so much for editing the script, letting me bounce ideas off of you. You guys have been absolutely crucial in the development of this channel. With that, like, comment, subscribe, and I'm Peter, and I will see you next time. Take care, guys. Have a good one.